Good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to you on behalf of Bob's broader family. We are grateful for your presence here today, and whether you are joining us in person in the sanctuary or online, as many folks are, and that is increasingly the reality in this post-COVID era or during COVID era, however you want to call it. We are always hybrid, present always in the spirit, whether we are in this space in person or we are watching online. We're grateful for the power of your presence. The memories that you bring in about Bob, the love that you carry in your hearts, that you then pour into this space, whether from far away or right here at hand. And we remember as well that there are certainly folks in any given memorial service who are not able to come due to health reasons or logistics, whatever the case might be, and they are no less present in the spirit here with us, as is Bob. I want to particularly thank the members of the family who have been so involved in planning for the service, especially Julie Roth Hastings, with whom I had several conversations, and the incredible coordination by Margot, Bob's daughter, in trying to bring all these disparate threads together so that we could come up with a service that felt true to Bob and true to our feelings for him, and that would tend to our sorrow, but also that would amplify our joy for having known him. No roster of participants is ever going to be fast and completely the same, so there have been a few changes in those that are participating. And as families and as communities go, we just pick up and we carry on, and so we'll sort of name those changes as we go through. But again, we're grateful for how we just roll forward with Bob's love in our hearts. At the end of this service, there will be a chance to sign the guest book if you have not had a chance already, and the family certainly hopes that you will join them as soon as you are able at Indian Hill Club. The address and the telephone number are printed on the back of your bulletin. If you are joining us online and you're able to attend that reception, then just certainly look up Indian Hill Club in Winnetka, and you'll find your way through Google Maps or whatever it might be. And we do remind you that's right after the service has ended. And also at the end of the service, we ask that you would just remain seated long enough for the family to clear the worship space and to be able to prepare themselves so they can head over to the club to greet you there. It is said that in times of loss, human community is all the more powerful, all the more important. And that sense of community and connectedness is amplified all the more deeply when we gather in sacred prayer. And so will you join me in the spirit of prayer, a prayer already begun through your presence. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. We gather, O God, within your eternal embrace to remember Robert Allen Hastings, or Bob as he was so broadly and fondly known. Within the wake of this loss and within the wash of emotions that Bob's passing evokes in each of us, we gather that we might find that quiet center where you abide. Love warms us and hope beams. That quiet center where we can be both alone with our innermost thoughts and feelings, and yet, at the very same time, blessedly fused with those around us and with the broader human fabric into which we are inseparably woven. Heavy, O God, are our hearts, impalpable our sorrow. But beside and within our keen sadness, grant us Bob's signature and steadying perspective. His ability to see what has been, what is, and what is ahead, to find the good in it, to make our prayerful pilgrim way. May this memorial service be for us, O God, a time when laughter might rise even through our tears. Gratitude might glow even when words fail us. And when we might know that Bob is forever held in your heavenly embrace and forever threaded into our hearts, minds, and lives. In your Spirit's unbreakable tether, join us as we now offer the prayer that Jesus taught us, saying together, Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done,
on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Our first reading, carefully chosen by the family and again coordinated through Margot's loving hand, is a poem by Ralph Waldo Emerson entitled Success. It is a poignant and yet very unfrilled reflection on how to assess a human life and also on how to live one. Reading this poem will be one of Bob's grandchildren, Allison Hastings. Allison, will you please come forward for your reading?
Success. To laugh often and love much, to win the respect of intelligent persons and the affection of children, to earn the approbation of honest critics, and to endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to give of oneself, to leave the world a little better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to have played and laughed with enthusiasm, and sung with exultation, to know that even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded.
Thank you, Allison. A eulogy is defined as a speech that praises someone highly, particularly at a time of loss. This you probably know. But I've always felt, and I think we here at Winnetka Congregational feel, that we come to memorials not for speeches so much as reflections of love. Where speeches may seek polish and perfection, rhetorical flourish, reflections of love seek simply to speak, openly and plainly, vulnerably and poignantly, and most of all, from the heart. Two of Bob's dear friends dating back to his youth are Ted Colescott and Don Ricks. And Ted and Don were unable to attend in person, but are here in the spirit, offering reflections on their behalf. I'm grateful to introduce Bob's grandson, Andreas Georgiadis. Andreas.
These are memories from Don Ricks and Ted Colescott, two of Bob's lifelong friends from Austin, Minnesota. We really miss Bob, his true friendship, his intellect, his joy in excelling at sports, and his love of family. Austin was a great place to grow up. If you didn't know, it's beautiful Midwest countryside. It's a place where everyone knows everyone, only about 25,000 people. It's a few hours from the big city, Minneapolis, and close to Rochester, home of the Mayo Clinic. It's a classic company town. Hormel was founded there and remains its biggest employer. It even has a spam museum. Everyone knew the Hastings family in Austin. Bob's father, Red Hastings, was athletic director of the Austin High School and decorated leader in Minnesota. His mother, Mary Hastings, was also an educator and an avid sportswoman, well known as the best golfer for miles around. Athletics were embedded in Bob's life from the earliest days. I remember him sharing stories about spending every weekend from the age of 2, riding around the back of his parents' golf cart and hitting balls. What might surprise you is that, despite all of Bob's athletic accomplishments, and the list is long, in Austin, the state of Minnesota, Harvard, and nationally, it did not come easy for him. Bob played everything: football, basketball, baseball, and golf. He was not one of the naturals where everything came easy. Everything Bob accomplished was because he worked at it. It was a real effort and discipline, step by step. We spoke to other classmates who remembered him exactly the same way. One of those friends was linesman when Bob was quarterback and led the team to several big victories in the state. He kept talking about Bob's drive and how hard he worked. Yes, Bob was the star, and he earned it through grit and determination. And Bob never took anything for granted. His father was the athletic director and coach. A lot of people might have let that go to their head. Bob was his own man. He set incredibly high standards for himself and kept raising the bar. It's why everyone respected him. It was the rest of his life where things were easy for him. He was exceptionally bright, the valedictorian of our class, and he was remarkably humble about it. He was confident. You could always count on him to have his own opinion on any subject, but he was never overbearing. Hearing all of this, I guess it shouldn't be a surprise to any of us that he married someone equally as smart and led his own children and grandchildren down the same path. As a friend, what we appreciated about him the most was his loyalty. You could call him about anything. He would always make the time for you and just listen. You always left feeling better. He was a real family man. I will never forget Bob calling from college the day he met Pat. He had seen her playing the piano and singing with her group. He said, "I just met the woman that I'm going to marry," and he couldn't stop talking about her. He was the same about his kids and grandchildren. He cherished everything about them and spending time with them. That's who Bob was, a passionate man, a driven man, a loving man. Our friend who will miss greatly, may you rest in peace.
Though Ted and Don could not be here in person, there is perhaps an equal and certainly a different power that comes from a younger generation, offering, in this case, Andreas, your voice, for their words to arc through. And they show how what makes someone who they were in this life lasts long beyond our earthly walk. And it lives in us as we carry it together forward and then pay that forward to the generations that follow on our heels. Another of Bob's dear friends is Ann Davis, and though, again, present in the spirit, she is attending her grandson's college graduation this weekend. Bob would certainly have approved of that. Bob's granddaughter, Mari Georgiadis, will speak on Ann's behalf, which is utterly fitting, as I am told, because Ann's daughter, Julie, and Margot are lifelong friends. Julie is Mari's godmother, and so, as the family likes to say, in a somewhat unofficial but now official way, Ann is Mari's grand godmother. And so, Mari, will you please come forward?
As mentioned, these are memories from a longtime friend, Ann Davis, who is at her grandson's graduation today. And she says, "Bob and I have been friends since college. My best friend at Radcliffe was dating his best friend at Harvard, and the rest is history. We had many double dates in college. After graduation, we all moved to Chicago as married couples and raised our kids together. Our daughters, Julie and Margot, were inseparable by high school and have remained best friends all their lives. Bob is one of my most cherished friends. I have so many memories of Bob, his many gifts of friendship. Bob and Pat loved to entertain. We had many Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners together. Our families adored the endless sing-alongs with Pat playing and Bob orchestrating behind the scenes. Bob loved cats, and I think so many of us here likely adopted one of the Hastings' adorable kittens. Bob took great pleasure in passing along these little bundles of joy and checking in on the siblings regularly. Harvard had a big place in our lives. We loved to attend Harvard events together and then sit for hours discussing and debating what we had just heard and learned: international affairs, community, healthcare, and art. Bob always had great notes and reveled in exchanging views to get deeper. Over the last years, as we have all aged, I have appreciated our times together even more. Bob is an incredibly positive person that you always want to be around. Even when he drove up to see me at my summer place in Wipagaki and somehow missed the turn and ended up at an Indian casino, he turned it into a fun time. He convinced me to come and rescue him, to check the place out, and we laughed about it for days. We used to pick each other up to make regular visits to one of our closest friends, Lou Guthrie. When Lou became hard to understand, We were a great team in making sure that one of us could decipher her words and make sure to keep the conversation going. When I moved into Westminster, where Bob had moved in with Julie, I cherished the fact that Bob was just down the street. Bob was somewhere where the knowledge of him being near was so comforting. I always knew that I could call him if I ever needed someone. Bob was truly a special friend. He is hugely missed, and I am grateful for a lifetime of friendship and memories.
Thank you, Mari. Our next reflection of love will be offered by another college friend, lifelong friend as well, in the Chicagoland area, Murray Levin. Murray, will you please come forward?
I would first like to thank Margot and Julie and the family for asking me to do this. It is indeed an honor, and I am more than pleased to give my reflections on my friend, Bob Hastings. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself so you'll understand our relationship. Because each of us who gives a eulogy has a different approach and a different view of the person we're eulogizing. Grandchildren, friends, new and old, and I am one who goes back to knowing about Bob since our days as undergraduates at Harvard, or as I like to say, coming from Boston, at Harvard. And if I pronounce things that way during my talk, you'll please forgive me. My students at Northwestern Medical School used to look at each other in amazement and say, "What the heck did he say?" And I would have to translate it from Bostonian into Chicagoan, and then they would understand what I was lecturing about. I did not know Bob as an undergraduate. I was a commuter because of financial circumstances. And I was a chemistry major, so I spent afternoons in the laboratory, destroying whatever exam grades I had gotten. Bob was in the Harvard Crimson quite frequently. A great basketball player, a great baseball player, indeed Harvard's first All-American baseball player, and inducted into the Harvard Hall of Fame because of that. And we did not know each other then. I knew of him, he did not know of me for the obvious reasons. Then in 2006, 50 years later, I was appointed because I volunteered too much. I'm like Adu Annie in Oklahoma, I can't say no. I was asked to represent our class at the Harvard Alumni Association for 3 years, and I did not know, but I became an ex officio member of the Harvard Club of Chicago's Board of Directors. And that's where Bob and I became friendly. He was on the board, he had been president, and we became friendly as classmates, and because we were suddenly realized we were truly kindred spirits. When our reunion came to pass, Joan and I, Joan is sitting there, over there, my wife of almost 61 years, Joan and I had gone to Cambridge, and I kept on asking everyone, "Where is Bob? Where is Bob Hastings?" I came back, and the first thing I did was call him and say, "I didn't see you, where were you?" Because I knew he was such an inveterate alumnus. And that's when I learned about Pat's illness, her heart attack, her long hours of cardiac bypass. And then I learned of her other illnesses with time. And I was able, as a professor of medicine at Northwestern, one can succeed from coming from the lower middle class, I was able to help Bob out considerably with consultants, and was able to at least put one of Pat's long-term illnesses under complete control, not myself, but by the oncologist I had sent her to. And she was thankful for that, and we became friendly as a couple. and went out many times for dinner, enjoying himself immensely. But one of the other aspects of Bob was that he was a volunteer. He volunteered his time enormously for everything Harvard in Chicago, as well as for his church, as well as for his village. I think Kenilworth is a village, if I'm not mistaken. It's hardly a city, or even a town. But at any rate, I learned enough about Bob to realize that even though he was a great athlete, I had finally been able to tie him in something. Neither one of us admitted that we were ahead. We had, between us, more three-button suits, more striped ties, and more button-down Oxford shirts than any two men in the history of the world. And that was because we were Ivy League members of the 50s. And we lived that way our entire lives, with the values we had learned of treating thy fellow man as thyself and as thy neighbor, of volunteering to our communities. And then Bob talked me into volunteering. I hope I'm not taking up too much time. For something was running for the Harvard Club of Chicago, for the Center for Public Interest Careers at Harvard. That was a group of students who considered, none of the ones I ever knew entered a career in public interest. But nonetheless, a number of them interned at various and sundry charitable and public interest organizations in Chicago, and Bob asked me to mentor them. He knew I couldn't say no, so I didn't. And I formed lifelong friendships with these kids, many of whom are now parents, many of whom and all of whom are successful, as befits their alma mater. And I'm still in touch with them now, many, many years after the mentorship. And a glowing story is that I was able to help a young lady who couldn't become pregnant go to the right place in Los Angeles. And she is now over 12 weeks pregnant with her in vitro pregnancy. And she was Magna, and she went to the Harvard Business School, and she has a wonderful life. And Joan and I the last time she was in Chicago, we took her out to dinner. And we had a wonderful time with her, and these kids have all grown up to become special, special people and good friends of mine. If it weren't for Bob Hastings, I would never have had those relationships. I would never have been able to have the warmth of mentoring that one gets when one truly loves students, as I do. And so my career in teaching and in patient care and in research has all come to the friendships that I had with Bob and with the people he turned my way for mentoring. Bob ran that whole program for the Harvard Club, to my knowledge, so that he was able to steer the right people to the right people. When Pat was very ill, I was able to help Bob and Pat with referrals. And he was very, very thankful for that. He was also very generous. He refused to let me pay for even half the dinners that we went out to. And even though I would sneak my credit card into the waiter before service, Bob always interrupted the waiter before the waiter could put my credit card in, and he ended up paying for it. So my memories of Bob are those of a late friendship but early knowledge of a person that I knew as a friend, as a colleague in the Harvard Club, and as someone I could help, and he helped us. So I'm very grateful and thankful for my friendship with him, and I thank the family again for asking me to give these comments. Thank you very much.
Murray, you wear a three-button suit very well. after all these years. So no need to apologize for being a preppy person in terms of your sartorial style from New England. I hearken from the same terrain, but from a more southern school with a blue color as their main color. We won't talk about that here. Yeah, yes, exactly. It's a little curious, given all the numerous and the very warm references to Harvard that we have had already. There will be certainly more in this service. Curious because of the color of the marble urn that just a little while ago, Pastor Jeffrey and I were very honored to help the family inter in the embrace of our churchyard just beyond the back wall of our sanctuary. And if you're ever in town and you need a prayerful moment or just to gather where you can feel just those spirits in the air and your pulse slow down, go through those gates and just walk around our churchyard, even if you're not visiting a loved one. But, you know, the color of Harvard is crimson. And so we pull out of this bag this beautiful marble urn, beautifully engraved with his name. It's so gorgeous, and it's the most odd color, Yale blue. The family said that they couldn't actually get engraved on the back. Crimson was not available, or they would have done that. So at any rate, we thank you for those memories, Murray. Bob has been a part of this church, an able-bodied and giving-hearted servant of this church for many, many years, along with Pat, and then when they started to come again as a couple with Julie. And we're so grateful for all of that. And so our associate pastor, the Reverend Jeffrey Phillips, has canvassed quite a few of our members to just gather some beautiful threads and stories to talk about what this church meant to Bob. And certainly he meant a great deal to this church. Jeffrey.
Thank you, Jeff. I was honored to have the opportunity to ask a diverse group of Winnetka Congregational Church members about Bob's involvement in and dedication to this congregation. I share a distillation of their memories and impressions. Many of these themes repeated from person to person and together witnessed to a Christian who was deeply committed both to God and to the church. First, Bob is remembered for his work in outreach, his support of and service to nonprofit organizations on behalf of this congregation. Good News Partners, Good News Church, Opportunity International, and others. For many years, he contributed his time and talents to the Winnetka Interfaith Council, now known as the New Trier Multi-Faith Alliance. Bob oversaw the Bylaws Committee, working on it assiduously, I was told, and being sure that the bylaws were followed. He was a highly respected addition to NTMA and is missed, said one member. Several people recall Bob's service as an usher, indeed as head usher of Usher Team Number 1. He was the consummate usher, said one member, impeccably dressed, taking ladies' arms and walking them down the center aisle to their seats. Ah, those were the days. It was in that capacity that Bob would also pick up church members who lived at the Presbyterian homes in Evanston, take them to church, and then bring them back home. Speaking of the Presbyterian home, Bob would take the poinsettias from our annual poinsettia party in December to our church members who lived there. One year, just very few years ago, we were trying to get more people involved in the deliveries. And it thus became my unfortunate duty to have to tell Bob that he could take some of the poinsettias to our church members at the Pres home, but not all of them, as he used to, because we wanted more people to have the opportunity to deliver poinsettias. He looked at me as if I had taken away his Santa Claus costume. I then realized how important this ministry was to Bob because this is who Bob was. He and Pat were shower-uppers, as we say where I'm from. Regulars, not only at worship, but at the many social events sponsored by this church over the years. One person recalled that Bob and Pat were founding members of First Friday, a fellowship group that started years ago and continues today. That same person remembered that when a particular Kenilworth family joined Winnetka Congregational Church, Pat and Bob had all the WCC couples domiciled in Kenilworth over to dinner at their home, as many as 6 families, to welcome that new Kenilworth family to this congregation. Bob and Pat's membership file is full of references to boards and committees to which Bob belonged and leadership positions which he held, to wit, chair of the trustees, capital funds campaign, budget committee, and many others. Also included in that file were numerous pieces of correspondence between Bob and the senior pastors of Winnetka Congregational Church. This actual correspondence, like with paper. Several of them were Bob's responses to sermons he had heard, book discussions at church he had attended, and articles he had read about the church's engagement with social issues. Each one reflected the thoughts and heart of a Christian who believed in exploring his faith, living his faith, and encouraging the church to practice its faith in order to make the world a better place. It means a lot to a pastor when a church member listens closely enough and cares deeply enough to send their pastor a thoughtful comment about a sermon, a book, a decision, an event, or an article. Bob would often drop into the adult faith formation ministry that I lead and come up to me that day or call me the next day with just a brief but poignant reflection. And I'd always be grateful because this is what we want the church to be, a place that provokes deeper faith, reflection, connection, and ultimately action. That is the church Bob fostered in word and in deed. And that is why he was so faithful to it and why he is so dearly missed.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And thanks to everyone that you spoke with and the trove of things you found in his church file. Jeffrey showed me the file. It looked like an FBI file. It was all good, I promise you. Please now rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our hymn, Come and Find the Quiet Center, as either printed in your bulletin or found on your screen. seated. In Paul's first letter to the community of believers in Corinth, Paul spoke of love, both what love is and what love decidedly is not. Paul's account of love neither discredits nor denies romantic love, and that is a gift. Nevertheless, it testifies to a love that dares to attend to life's more difficult realities, its more vexing problems, and to a love that humbly seeks to know oneself in the willing service of others. Offering our reading from Paul's treatise on love will be Bob's grandson, Anthony Georgiadis. Anthony.
If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is a patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends, but as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love.
Thank you, Anthony. Somewhere within the multiverse that is God's eternity, I think Ralph Waldo Emerson, who wrote Success, which we heard at the beginning of our service, and Paul are talking about how they were pretty much pointing at the same thing, about how to live and how to measure one's life. And certainly we saw signs of that embodiment of love in Bob's life so powerfully, and we're grateful for that. Bob's son Bill was unable to be here in person, though he is purely present in the spirit with all of us. But late this December, shortly after Bob passed away, the family had a family-only service, and Bill offered moving and eloquent commentary on his father and on his relationship with him. And so today, Bill's son and Bob's grandson, Will Hastings, will offer remarks that draw richly from those eloquent reflections and heartfelt reflections that Bill had offered back in December. Will you please come forward?
My father had a big role in our family. He was the rock in our lives and the calm in any storm. He was definitely all A's. Academics. As you heard from everyone today, he was a really smart man and a continuous learner all his life. He wanted to stay in touch with what was next. He and my mom were always attending various lectures on wide ranges of topics: business, foreign affairs, the arts. They always had something interesting to share. And to be right there with us in conversation and loved to send us articles he had found or asked about new areas to explore or people we might find it helpful to meet. Athlete. It could be intimidating to be the son of such an accomplished athlete, but he was always a humble and helpful teacher. He had infinite patience to teach me any sport, tennis, golf, swimming, baseball. He was right there with you to unravel what he had learned step by step. One of my favorite memories is from playing hockey. I love the sport, so my father learned it. Even though he had not played it growing up, despite his Minnesota heritage, like everything else, he mastered it and eventually became the coach of our Wilmette travel team and took us all the way to the state championship. He wanted to be there to help me grow and always have fun. Advocate. My father was someone that you could always count on. Whatever you had passion for, he was there to support you. From a young age, I was fascinated by cars, and when I was in high school, I decided to dismantle his BMW in the garage and to understand better how it worked. And as you can imagine, he was entirely not thrilled. But when he returned from that business trip, he also learned to help me put it back together. He sparked my interest in engineering. For him, it was all about encouraging me to find my passions, even if it was an expense for him. I've seen him repeat this advocacy with his grandchildren. He was a tireless champion of their interests in sports and music. He would research the best lessons, camps, and take them to concerts and games. Some of my kids' most treasured memories are going to Ravinia, Millennium Park, and upstate New York in the summers to attend concerts with my parents. Accountable. My father felt accountable as the leader at his work and in the community around him. I think this sense of accountability is a big part of why he added a second chapter of his career to work in education. He wanted to give back to his institutions that had done so much for him. Harvard and then several private schools. The Winnetka Congregational Church also meant a lot to him. We came every Sunday, and I remember tagging along to the weekly adult discussion group meetings. He always left with a pad of notes and engaged me in all the discussions afterward. He wanted to ensure that I had internalized the messages and connected them to something real in my life. Thanks, Dad, for being my A player. May you rest in peace.
Thank you, Will, for your presence, your words, and for those that you allowed to flow through you on behalf of your father. Offering our next reflection of love will be Jason Bola. And Jason will be speaking on behalf of his mother, Sue Hastings Bola, and on behalf of his uncle, John Hastings, who is Bob's brother. Jason, will you please come forward?
Greetings to all. As mentioned, I'm going to recount a few stories and sentiments from the Hastings side of the family. The first stories are from my mom, Bob's sister, and a little bit of commentary from my uncle, John, as well. So my mom wrote, I always had a big brother and a little brother. As you can guess, Bob was my big brother, and John was my younger brother. To this day, I describe them that way. That's because Bob was almost 9 years older than me and left for college when I was in 4th grade. John was in 2nd grade. The best story about the limited time the three of us were living in the same house was that John and I contracted polio in 1952, the fall of Bob's senior year in high school. And that kept Bob and Dad home from the biggest football game of the year in our hometown of Austin, Minnesota. And Dad was the coach and Bob was the quarterback. The team was undefeated. Doctors were beginning to realize that polio was contagious and that the local hospital was full, so we were all confined to the house. Fortunately, we both had light cases and recovered, and more importantly, the football team won the game and it made all the papers in Minnesota. Bob left a big legacy for both of us when he took off to Harvard. Years later, when I got to high school, I started to hear more about it. Miss Horvath, the storied algebra teacher, greeted me on the first day of freshman class saying, "Oh, are you Bob Hastings' little sister?" It was a tough act to follow a big brother who had been valedictorian of his class, all-state in 3 sports, and the Minnesota State Athlete of the Year. But we could also brag about it. Over the years, we learned a few stories about Bob in college. The one I remember best was told to me by John. It seems that Bob had a freshman year roommate who was also planning to go out for the Harvard baseball team. Both had played first base in high school, and Bob's roommate was left-handed. First base was really the best and virtually the only position that he could play successfully. So Bob said, "No problem, I'll play shortstop." And that was the kind of guy that he was. He did switch to shortstop and was named All-American in that new position. Bob went on to graduate school at Harvard rather than taking one of his 2 offers to play professional baseball. But we were all really happy that he was making a decision that seemed really good for he and Pat, to whom he'd become engaged. Bob had spied Pat the first week of her freshman year at a party introducing Harvard men to the women of Wellesley. Pat was at the piano playing show tunes by ear, and everyone has gathered around, and that was it. They married after his graduate school year and then moved to Evanston. That move was fortunate for me. I had made the decision to go to Northwestern to attend Medill, the journalism school. That meant I could see them occasionally. I became a reliable evening babysitter for Billy and Margot, and Bob and Pat often were chaperones for Northwestern sorority parties. After they returned from their evening events, we often spent nights talking. I was very interested in everything they had to say about making one's way into a professional career. Bob continued to stay in touch with John and me through our whole lives. One summer when Margot was in middle school, Bob came up to Minnesota to drop her off at Camp Lake Hubert. John and Sheila were in Grand Rapids, and the 2 brothers went fishing. Bob had so much fun going after sunfish and bluegills on the Mississippi River that he could not quit until it was nearly dark, and the 2 of them were quite late for dinner. Everyone in our immediate family were athletes and naturally competitive, but it even extended to seeing who could catch the most fish. Bob and Pat also came to our weddings and our children's weddings. That meant 4 trips to North Dakota for the wedding of John's 3 girls, and also a trip to California when Jason was married. That's me. One of those North Dakota trips was also for the celebration of grandmother's Hastings' 90th birthday. Margot and her family came up, and we really celebrated as a family. One of the great things about the Hastings, Georgiadis, Bola, and now Boyd family is that we have stepping stone ages. Bob mentored me and Jason. John and Sheila worked with me to manage Grandma Hastings' final years. And Jason and Christine have benefited from the advice, support, and friendship of Margot and Pandalise. Jason and Christine and their spouses have, in turn, enjoyed hosting Mari, Andreas, and Anthony at our homes. All of the extended Hastings families are always welcome at our California, Florida, and North Dakota homes. Although the 3 of us scattered to different geographies, we always stayed close. I eventually went to the board of advisors for Medill, which allowed me to visit Bob and Pat at least twice a year during board meetings. I usually stayed with Margot and Pandalise. One summer, I even enjoyed helping Bob and Pat sort all of Pat's papers. Bob was also the family I turned to when Rance entered my life. Bob met us downtown for dinner to approve the new man in my life. 2 years ago, having lost Pat, Bob married Julie. Really, I never thought he would find someone that had competed in sports and enjoyed and followed all the sports live and on TV like our family. We were happy he had someone he can enjoy sharing his life with those last few years. Death is never expected. It is always too soon. I miss him. So for my own personal thoughts, I first knew Uncle Bob through family visits when I was a small child, but I was really lucky to get to know him when I moved to Evanston to attend Northwestern University. Bob and Pat always took an interest in what I was doing and welcomed me as a family into their lives. Our relationship continued as I followed in his and Margot's and Panelise's footsteps in attending Harvard Business School. Bob loved coming back to Boston, and when he did, he would join me as a guest visitor to my classes, and then we would play squash together on the business school campus. You know, at the time, I was 25, 26, and he was 65, 66. And we had friendly games, but he would regularly beat me as he refused to give a competitive inch. Clearly, he was an amazing sportsman and athlete. However, he was also kind, educated, and a generous role model to look up to and learn from. I feel very fortunate to have been able to spend as much time with him as I did. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. May we now all rise in body or in spirit to join in singing our next hymn, For All the Saints. Again, is found in your bulletin or on your screen. Seated. Our next reflection of love will be offered by Bob's daughter, Margot.
Thank you all for coming to celebrate my father's life. It means a lot to have you all here. Anybody who knows me well knows that I was definitely Daddy's girl. It's kind of obvious. I look like him. We love sports and music together, and I just happened to go to both of his schools that age. And stop talking about the blue stuff, you know. Just got to move on from that. But it really went a lot deeper for me. When I reflect on my father and all he meant to me, I realized what an incredible trailblazer he was for his generation. While most men of his generation were obsessed with their career, he showed balance before that really was talked about. He relished his work and his travels, but he was always there for me. He was a great homework buddy, even over the phone. Even the most complicated math and science problem was easy for him. And he made Saturdays fun, even running errands. He made an adventure out of visits to the bank, the hardware, gardening, or grocery store, or even the post office. He knew everyone by name. And of course, I always got rewarded for my patience with a bag of licorice or a trip to Homer's. And he was a trailblazer because way before diversity was a thing, he showed me from a young age how to feel comfortable sticking out. Started by teaching me how to throw and hit baseballs like a girl, which meant for him better than the boys, and then signing me up for the boys' Pee Wee baseball team and making sure I was the best player. He would bring me as a substitute, doubles partner to his Indian Hill Men's Club matches. Just by the way, women were not allowed to play tennis before noon on Saturday. And then he told all the men who were playing against us not to hold back when I was at the net. He also used to take me to Harvard events. And I was usually pretty intimidated because he would leave me to talk to all sorts of unbelievably smart people and just kind of leave me there. But what I realize now is it was all about learning to hold your own in any room. And he was an incredible role model of a supportive spouse. There were not very many working women in our town, but he really encouraged my mother to pursue her passion for making healthcare better for everybody. My father also showed me the value of having a sponsor. He was much more than just a mentor, and I could call him about anything. Friends, boyfriends, crazy bosses and boards, my kids, whatever. And it was usually when I was driving to or from somewhere, particularly when we have our kids. And my parents were there for my friends, too. I've had so many notes from my close friends talking about memories of hanging out with my parents and getting amazing life advice. A lot of people considered my dad as like a second dad. And when it came to any really important work and life choices, my father was definitely the chair of my personal board of directors. He knew me so well, how to push me, how to challenge my thinking, and he just kept raising the bar, with a carefully placed, why not? Of course you can do that. And he also was refreshingly honest about his own choices and what I could learn from them. And I still live by his wisdom and have tried to pass it down to my own children. Major in people, not subjects. People who push boundaries help you see possibilities. Learn from every kind of leader. The worst ones teach you the value of leadership. Never be afraid to take risks to grow faster. You only learn when you feel uncomfortable. And most importantly, be quick to be kind. Everyone is right from their perspective. And seek out the good in everyone. Being positive is a choice. My father showed that positivity and what he believed in. Always actions, not words. And his faith, as you heard today, showed up for others as a committed church usher and member, delivering meals or flowers to people in need or shut in at the holidays, making our neighborhood more beautiful by planting all the triangles each season and tending to them, taking us to interfaith Thanksgiving services and making sure that we understood all religions. And most importantly, his endless hugs and that squeeze of that huge palmy hand, and Julie, you know what I'm talking about, that always showed me how much I was loved. He was a really awesome dad, a trailblazer who was ahead of his time. Thank you for giving me the belief that I could do anything and the gift of giving to others. You will live on with us always.
Amen, Marco. And as eloquent and as well organized as your words were, your words that caught in your throat and the tears that brimmed your eyes at the end spoke as loudly as anything you said in your spoken remarks. So we thank you for that. Our final reflection of love will be offered by Bob's second wife, Julie Roth Hastings. Julie, please come forward and offer your reflection.
Good afternoon. When Bob and I were married on June 26th of 2019, he was 84 and I was 79. We were hoping and quite sure we would have 5 good years together. Sadly, that didn't happen. We were married for 2 years, 5 months, 23 days, and 1 hour. And we enjoyed very much our life together as man and wife. Bob and I liked one another. We trusted one another. We respected one another. And we loved one another. Interestingly enough, we agreed on most everything with the exception of some aspects of higher education and some aspects of the present situation in our great nation. However, we were able to discuss those differences in a calm manner, and we learned from those discussions and retained what we learned from them. It was very interesting. My children and my grandchildren knew Bob and liked Bob and respected him, always. I must say, it's been a privilege and a pleasure to be married to Robert Allen Hastings. He was one of the very best.
Thank you, Julie. We now look forward to a song of remembrance offered by Mari and her friend Caroline, Ave Maria. Amen, and thank you. May we continue in the spirit of prayer. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. O gracious God, to each of us who walk this earth, you grant the gift of life. It is a gift so precious that even all the prophets and poets, all the scientists and stargazers across the teeming centuries cannot but gloss its true worth, cannot but vaguely plumb its boundless depth. that you would so freely bestow so singular and heavenly a gift, serves only to remind us of how much you love each and every one of us, as surely you and we loved Bob. Even a short life, let alone a long one, as Bob's was, cannot be aptly summarized in a single service. But blessedly, that was not our aim. Our humble yet holy aim was to give voice to but some of the great and good things, to but some of the rich and rooting memories, to but some of the copious and precious pixels that inform a broader picture of who Bob was, is, and always will be. A family man, a cherished friend, a devoted Christian and servant of this church, an athlete extraordinaire, a businessman, a teacher, a coach, and a trailblazer, a thoughtful man, a man of intention and of action, of words made real. As we, O Holy One, formally commend Bob's earthly soul to you, we ask that this time of remembrance might now recommend to us all that we cherished in and all that we received from Bob Hastings. And we ask that you might remind us that Bob forever abides in our souls, in our sinews, and in every breath and memory, and in the Spirit that holds us all as one. All this and so much more we do pray in your holy and convening name. Amen. The family chose a final reading, a poem entitled "Do Not Stand at My Grave and Weep," and it seemed the appropriate spot for it was as almost a pre-benediction, a sending set of words. It was to have been read by Margot's cousin, Andrew Melisinos, but he was not able to come due to COVID protocols, and so we are pleased that this poem will now be offered by Christine Bola. Christine.
Do not stand at my grave and weep. I'm not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I'm not there. I did not die.
Thank you, Christine. And as surely as we heard her voice, we hope that you all heard and will continue to hear Bob's voice speaking those words into our consciousness. He certainly would want us to move forward and to look to what is ahead as we give thanks for all that has been. May we rise now in body or in spirit to join in our closing hymn, Let There Be Peace on Earth, which certainly speaks to Bob's love of multi-faith harmony, something he was deeply devoted to in his earthly walk. To be seated. Once again, on behalf of Bob's broader family, I thank each and every one of you for your presence here today, whether on site or online. We are grateful for your conduit of the Holy Spirit, from bringing the memories that you hold of Bob. We do hope you will join the family as you are able at the reception that immediately follows this service at Indian Hill Club. Again, the address and number are printed on your bulletin and can be found if you Google that. If you are at home and planning on joining the reception, we do hope you will. If you have not signed the guest book, it will probably be available for a short while here before you leave. Please do sign that. The family always appreciates knowing that you were here in case they couldn't speak to you in person. And then it will be also brought over to the Indian Hill Club for a further opportunity there. I invite you to remain seated at the end of the benediction so that you can allow the family to make their exit, and then we will invite you to rise and to leave as you so wish. And I see that the sun has come out, so Bob is shining on us in the sanctuary and the great sun above on our beautiful lawn outdoors. And now, a benediction, a good word for each of you from the God that loves you as you are. Having remembered and celebrated Bob's life and legacy, having steeped in memories evocative well, and having communed not only in God's eternal spirit, but in Bob's spirit, go forth to love and to serve, to live with kindness, to seek God's light, both in others and in yourself and in the world around you, so that we might then invite, prepare, and empower others to realize their best lives, their truest selves, which is God's call to each of us. And in so doing, that we might forever feel Bob with us. ever and always with us. Amen.